Good evening, everyone. I think it's now 6 o'clock, so we can start. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to start the meeting with a somewhat sad notice. It is with sadness that I announce the death of Mark Crosby, who was a councillor here in North Somerset Council during the last administration. In addition to representing his residents in his ward, he was passionate about adult and social care and was scrutiny chair for the Adult and Social Care Policy Committee. Mark will be sadly missed by all of us at North Somerset Council who had the pleasure of working with him, and we send our sincere condolences to his family. Thank you. So moving on with the agenda, we have no public participation. Apologies for absence.
Chairperson, I've received advance apologies from Councillors Bird, Hogg, Cole, Keating, Thomas and Young, and I think Councillor Crew is trying to join us remotely, but if not, he also offers apologies.
Thank you. Sorry, Catherine.
I just want it noted that Councillor Parker will be joining us, but he may be up to 40 minutes late.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else? No. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest? None. Thank you. Now we look at the minutes of the last meeting. Over to our leader. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour?
Chairperson, can I just note that Councillor Parker is showing as absent in the minutes, but he was actually here but came late.
Did you all hear that? Councillor Parker was noted as absent for the last meeting. He came 40 minutes late. Is that right? Thank you. So we move on to item 5, Support Services 2025 Commissioning Intentions. Over to Councillor Bell for this one.
Thank you, Chairman. If colleagues are okay with this, I won't stand up because otherwise we're here bobbing up and down. We've got the motion for the ocean as it is tonight, so there'll be enough bobbing up and down. The Support Services 2025 Commissioning Intentions Report has been sent out with the papers. I hope colleagues have read it, and I thank those that attended the all-member briefing that was organised recently on this report and sets out the background. Obviously, the purpose of the report is to cover us against the existing support services contract arrangements that we've got. They've been in existence since 2010 and are due to reach the end of their term in September 2025. So this is the range of support services that are currently commissioned through Agilicis and includes things like ICT provision, business support, payroll, facilities management, revenues, benefits and so on. The purpose of the report is to seek Council's approval to progress with the commissioning plan for these services, and the report sets out the proposal to restructure things so that we look to move towards a multiple provider model. So instead of having a single provider, we look at different options for different services, depending on what offers the best value to us as a council and in terms of the services that we're able to provide both to internal users and to our residents and businesses. The first part is intended to focus on the revenues and benefits solution, and that's set out in the report, along with exchequer services and parking administration, and then we will come later in the process to some of the other support services that we will need to recommissioning. It's worth noting in the report that obviously there's been a strong options appraisal over several years, looking at different possible models and solutions that we could deploy for the recommissioning of these services, and we'll continue to do that as the process goes forward. So I move the recommendations as set out in the report and look for a seconder. Thanks.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gibbons. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Who's that at the back there? Is that you, Councillor Shopland?
I will stand up, ma'am. I might be missed otherwise.
You might be.
I don't know, quite frankly, whether this comes under what we're discussing, but if it doesn't, it should do. The communications of this council with the public are horrendous. For many of us, they are virtually non-existent. Unless you have a computer, you virtually have no communications. There is no desk where you can come into the town hall and leave anything for the council that I know of. There used to be a very efficient process. If you write a letter, very often they go unanswered. I can prove that myself. And if you make a telephone call, it's a disaster. There are no officer telephone numbers available to the public. If the occasional one slips out, there is very rarely anyone to answer it. I tried the rating department yesterday twice on 2 separate subjects, domestic and non-domestic rates. I spent half an hour before on total trying to communicate with this council. The public are not prepared to stand for that. And I think that it is time that we got ourselves sorted out. This has been an ongoing problem now for several years. The public think we are uncaring and we don't care and we're only looking after ourselves. So please, can this be included in the report and can something urgently be done about it? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, do you want to? Later, right. I think we have Councillor Thornton. Over to you, Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So some of the councillors here this evening will know that I'm a former North Somerset Council member of staff and also a former Unison branch secretary at the council, and that I have a very long history with this particular contract. So I'm just going to give you a bit of background. In 2010, my trade union, Unison, along with many of the Labour and Lib Dem councillors present today who were then in opposition, opposed the contracting out of our support services on a number of grounds, including the impact on staff, overinflated savings promises, loss of flexibility, control and accountability, and difficulties with managing such a large contract. When the contract was extended further in 2015 to include even more services, including the business support staff that are so crucial in supporting frontline workers, my trade union and opposition councillors again opposed it. As a result, I was very pleased, now I'm a councillor, to be invited to a briefing ahead of this meeting, which outlined the proposals for the recommissioning of this contract, including splitting up the contract and commissioning multiple providers, the possibility of some services being brought back in-house and some being shared with other public sector bodies. I recognise the financial challenges the council faces due to 13 years of Tory austerity, but I would like to see the preparation of an in-house option as a comparator for every part of the support services contract that the council is looking to recommission. This will give councillors an idea of whether the private sector is indeed providing value for money and, crucially, whether or not outsourcing is in the public interest. This is potentially particularly important for the revenues and benefits contract, given that there are likely to be a limited number of market operators who will bid for it and therefore they won't provide much in terms of competitive pricing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. I think Councillor Petty, did you want to?
Thank you. Today I attended one of the invited events around getting to know the Council Connect service a little bit further. And actually, we were able, a handful of us attended, and I know that all councillors were invited to these sessions, and we were able to listen in to phone calls being received, which does refer to Councillor Shopland's comment. I found that the staff and operatives were helpful, able to do more than I expected on the phone call. So, you know, not just signposting onto a further service, but actually really able to help the needs of whoever was calling. It was only a short visit, but it was helpful to get. And I was impressed by the service there. So I wanted to kind of say thank you to those who are doing a good job. And from the data that I saw, actually these phone calls, in my experience, on the short visit I had, they were answered very promptly. But we were also shown data on the average call times. I think that actually a really helpful thing to take away for your residents is to let them know that really 9 o'clock till 10:30 a.m. is the busiest time of our phone lines. If you don't have time to wait, then you can, you know, recommend to your residents and yourselves, call a bit later and you're likely to get through more easily. What I'm interested in this change of contract is I certainly agree that it's better to avoid the risk of it all being renewed on that one date. And also, I'd like to understand or hope that this new contract opportunity will recognise well when tech has moved forward and really innovation can be adopted in a timely fashion. Because my concern has been that when we've had a contract that was for 15 years, whenever you asked for something new about like a tech bot or any new technology that was on the marketplace, it felt like there was an additional fee, and that is not good value for money for our residents, and that does not show a council that is up to speed with 2023 technology, 2021 technology. You know, let's have more nimble contracts that enable, as tech gets better, which inevitably it always does, we aren't always on the back foot in the offer that we can provide to our residents, who sometimes will always need a telephone call, but others are comfortable using mobile phones, using online. So I hope that our services can move with the times. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Could I ask Councillor Bell to sum up? I didn't see your hand. Councillor Ashton?
Thank you, Chairman. I understand, Mike, why you're doing this, and I realise it's a difficult thing to go through. It seems to go in cycles. Every 10, 15 years, you either put things out to smaller contracts, or you bring it all in-house, or you put it under one contract. I think the real problem is there's no one answer. There's no right or wrong answer. It varies from year to year, things going well, things not going quite as you expected. I think the danger is looking for change to be the answer, and it's not. When you look at two comparators of outsourcing or putting it under one contract, they both look great, they both promise great things, but of course neither are going to work 100%. As soon as something goes wrong, you look at the other side with the other version of doing it. And the danger is in the actual change itself, I think. To change things over a period of years, how is that going to work? Because as the contract winds down, it'll become more expensive for those remaining services. It's expensive not in terms of finance, but in terms of staffing positions. You say there's increased council contract management. I know when we had a lot of outsourced services, we ended up building such a big internal team to make sure that the external team were doing what we wanted. And so it lost half the benefit. So I know you recognise things in here, but things like weaknesses being increased points of accountability, I would have thought that was a strength. You know, from some of the comments going around now, actually more accountability on show would be helpful. So I would just ask that don't take for granted that change is going to be better just because it's not 100% working the way you want at the moment. And do look at the outcomes, not the process. I think there's often a danger that we look at how things are done, not what we want the end result to be. So good luck, it's not easy. Whatever you decide, there will be gaps in it and there will be reasons why not to have done it. But I support you going through it anyway.
Thank you for that. Catherine, Councillor Gibbons?
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly echo what Councillor Petty said, because I was at the session and I saw how skilled and dedicated and sympathetic to the callers that the staff were, and it was impressive. And to refer to Councillor Thornton's speech and say that I believe that as a Labour group we would welcome at least having it clearly articulated in contract renewals like this, or, you know, that what the implications of bringing it in-house actually would be, whether it's in the other options considered, so that at least residents can see and understand our thinking, and perhaps, you know, why we might have an aspiration to bring these services in-house, but we're not doing it currently. I think it would be very valuable that people understood that in terms of the facts and figures. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I can see any more. Councillor Bell, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you very much, and lots of very helpful comments and constructive comments there. So firstly, just on Councillor Shopland's point around the customer experience, so he described it as communications, but it would be more accurate to describe it as our customer interface, the interface that we have with residents and businesses. So that absolutely is in scope in terms of this contract, and we will be absolutely looking to see what else we can do as part of that to further strengthen outcomes for residents and businesses who have a reason to interact with us. However, as Councillor Petty and Councillor Gibbons mentioned, I would really challenge his description of what it's like to encounter the council. The facts are that the great majority of people have a positive interaction with the council and do get information, whether that's through the website, whether that's through the contact centre or in other ways. That's a fact. It's not a matter of opinion. It's something that we do measure and monitor very closely. We have a publicly accessible dashboard that reports on all of the key indicators in terms of the performance of the customer contact centre and how that's doing. And actually, the current providers, whatever weaknesses there might be in terms of what we do, are amongst the best providers and the best performers in the country. That doesn't mean that there isn't more that we can do, and that doesn't mean that people's experience is always perfect. And so it's really helpful to have specific feedback from elected members and from residents and anyone who interacts with the council so that we can address some of those concerns. If Councillor Shopland had been part of the session today, which was open to all members to engage in terms of finding out about how the call centre operates, he would have seen that we were challenging the existing operators about their performance, about the length of waiting times in some circumstances, and whether people got the right help first time rather than in subsequent calls. So we're absolutely asking the right questions, so just to give you that assurance. In terms of the in-house options, so a few colleagues, including Councillor Thornton, have mentioned that. Just to reassure you, we absolutely have all the way through considered all of the options, including procuring one contract again, looking at what we can bring in-house. The report makes clear that there will be elements that we will look to bring in-house, so that definitely will happen in the course of some elements. We're looking at partnerships with other local authorities to deliver some of these packages as well, so that will absolutely be an option. And the whole purpose of this procurement process is to try and make sure that we deliver the services and the support that we need, and we deliver the financial savings that we've got to because of our budget pressures. So nothing is decided until we've got a good business case that underpins it. And I think that would be my assurance to Councillor Ashton as well. He's right, there's no perfect solution, and unfortunately we're not going to find one, are we? It's an increasingly competitive marketplace. It's harder to drive value out of some of these contractual relationships. The number of providers has declined over the years, so there aren't any easy solutions, and that's why we've got to be creative and flexible in terms of the solutions. And I think that picks up Councillor Petty's point, and one of the weaknesses actually with our bulk contract with Agilicis has been that it hasn't been flexible and responsive enough when circumstances have changed. And she's absolutely right that we have had to have some difficult conversations, and it's been really hard to respond to the new challenges, so particularly when we came through the COVID pandemic and so on. And that's why innovation, technology, and thinking about providers who can give us the expertise that we need in the right areas is absolutely the right way for us to go. But I really encourage colleagues to continue to engage in the process as we develop this. I know the scrutiny panel, chaired by Councillor Bridger, is going to do further work to keep monitoring this and make sure that members are informed and understand the process as we go forward. But I appreciate colleagues' feedback and support.
Thank you. So, all those in favour of supporting the recommendation, please put your hands up. Thank you. Any abstentions? Anybody against? I think it's unanimous. Thank you very much. On to item 6. If I could ask Councillor Waite and Amika to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report summarises our progress with the Climate Emergency Action Plan. It's comprehensive and outlines our commitment to achieving net zero emissions, their measurement and progress. It lists key focus points and a strategy for adapting to the effects of climate change and proposes some changes to our climate change governance. As you will have seen, a number of success stories is included in the report. For instance, we made a start with decarbonising the council estate and transport with projects such as the work at the campus building and the Clevedon Library. There's the social housing decarbonisation grant to Alliance Homes and work on the bus service improvement plan. We participated in schemes to offer energy saving grants to residents, as well as net zero grants to business, and adopted the hugely important flood risk management strategy. And finally, but not last and least, we achieved the Carbon Literacy Silver accreditation. So overall, it's taken us in the last 4 years to reduce our overall emissions by 24%, but the pace of reduction is too slow. Regional emissions are still going up, particularly in transport, and we are significantly off target to reaching net zero by 2030. 2030 is looming. Across the world, vulnerable communities face displacement due to heat waves, wildfires, flooding, and crop failure. We've seen it in Europe, and we've seen it at home too. We've broken all the temperature records, and as if that's not enough, recent reports indicate unprecedented low levels of sea ice in Antarctica. 24% of North Somerset lies below sea level. So the prospect of sea levels rising and the increasing risk of flooding should ring all our alarm bells. But when we consulted over the flood risk management strategy, just 48 people responded. It really shows how badly we need to raise the awareness of our flood risk. It's also true to say that our path to net zero is strewn with challenges. I think it's fair to say that our single biggest hurdle is a government wedded to fossil fuels. Lack of legislation and enforcement leaves us with sewage on our beaches and polluted rivers. Despite having some of the leakiest homes in Europe, there is insufficient government funding for home insulation, and grants for solar or heat pumps are too limited in scope to have sufficient impact. So in the absence of government action, we have no choice but to face these challenges ourselves. This will mean making bold decisions as we prepare, adapt, and make the most of the opportunities a green transition will bring North Somerset through new job opportunities, cleaner air, greener spaces, and healthier lives for all. Climate change affects everybody, just not in equal measure. This is why it is crucial we work towards a just transition in which the most vulnerable are protected. I am proud to represent the Winford ward and to wear the climate change hat too, but I am daunted by the burden of responsibility because I cannot lie. Our 2030 target is ambitious. It will require support for the most vulnerable, changing behaviours towards active travel, increased use of public transport, and the transition from diesel and petrol to electric cars. It requires a commitment to support our nature recovery and biodiversity, as well as green jobs creation and supporting businesses and investment in community energy. It's an awful lot to take on, and I cannot do this all by myself. If we want to reach net zero by 2030, we need to bring people with us. So I call on every councillor here in the chamber, please engage with your communities, talk about climate change, highlight the positive impacts of our actions, promote net zero funding for people and businesses in your ward, because all of it will support our successful transition to a greener, fairer future. Now, the report in front of you sets out how we will create net zero pathways for North Somerset Council and strengthen the governance of our climate change action plan. Some of this work has already begun. The data dashboard now allocates specific actions to executive members. This will help clarify individual areas of responsibility and make monitoring of outcomes easier. It's crucial that we act quickly when government decarbonisation funding does become available. So we propose to delegate authority to the Section 151 officer in consultation with myself and the executive to submit funding bids of up to £10 million. These combined actions will drive our work in the years ahead. Now, as a new council, many of you, like me, are also newly elected councillors. It is right, therefore, that we should jointly reconfirm our commitment to reaching net zero by 2030. I believe it is the most important commitment we will make. I ask you, therefore, to endorse this report's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Bridget? Thank you. I think Councillor Crawford-Hawley, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. An interest in this topic comes from my background as a geographer, though my depth of understanding pales into insignificance when set against modern research in climatology. I retain a smattering of understanding, but I'm neither a scientist nor a statistician, and so must settle for being nothing more than an interested, semi-knowledgeable observer.
John, could you bring your mic a bit closer, please? Thank you.
It's a really frustrating position to be in because I ought to know more, would indeed like to know more, but must, like all of us here today, rely on truth coming from others and in so doing attempt to sift fact and opinion into their respective corners, and to do so in this world which increasingly relies on information garnered from many a corner, which often brooks no contrary views. For the sake of discussion, let us accept climate is changing and that some, arguably most, of this change is the result of human activity. That which is not caused by us cannot be controlled by us. That which is caused by us can be controlled by us to a certain extent, but only within the confines allowed by the various processes of political, economic, military, and public powers which our world is divided into. I've read the report with more than passing interest and thank the author for highlighting a number of challenging issues. Chairman, worryingly, but honestly, the author tells us on page 63, climate emergency officers have no ability to check the reliability of data. Therefore, the data collected might not be entirely accurate. Then on page 65, admitting that based on data available, North Somerset Council is significantly off target to reach net zero by 2030, but officers are, quote, pursuing a series of actions to help put in place the right leadership. So, I ask the question, are we off target and have we inadequate leadership? A new pathway will be assessed. More robust monitoring of progress will provide opportunities to take action and prioritise decisions, all written in the future tense, which again raises the question, what have we been doing until now? To fully address reduction of emissions from our own buildings will require long-term capital plus significant capacity and investment, Yet the average time to complete a government questionnaire when seeking capital is, if I'm to believe this report, 20 minutes before the cash has gone. Sounds more like an easy viewing TV quiz game. Chairman, we're being asked to give the Section 51 officer and one executive member delegated ability to commit the council to a potential £5 million expenditure, and yet, at the current rate of CO2 reduction in North Somerset, we'll be on target to reach net zero in 85 years' time. Surely we've got to have targets, and I'm personally in favour of the targets, but to deliver net zero, we're told significant additional funding will be needed, and this, let's be realistic, in a run-up to a general election when our resources are already stretched to the point of public dissatisfaction and increasing disbelief in the body politic to achieve anything, and when officers admit, quote, there may be legal implications for the council from any initiative, and when told the current increase in local carbon emission is directly linked to improved economic recovery, it's going to be mighty challenging convincing job seekers, low-income families, business leaders, wage improvement activists, the marginalised, let alone sceptics and cynics, that we can show the likes of China and Russia wherein lies the land of milk and honey. I wish us luck, but hope we will rely on a mixture of the passionate and the hard-headed to take us towards net zero. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think Councillor Shopland, you were next.
Unfortunately, Madam Chairman, but maybe fortunately for the Council, Councillor Crockford-Hawley has said a lot what I was going to say. But I would just say this in the debate. This debate is becoming emotional, and there is an element of fear creeping into it. Children are being frightened at school. Now, I have lived through the Cold War, lived through the atom bomb, the H-bomb. It was never affected the children. We were never indoctrinated like they are being indoctrinated today. And they are growing up in a climate of fear. That is utterly and completely wrong. Climate change has happened through the ages. As Councillor Crockford-Hawley said, if this is a natural progress, there is nothing we can do about it. We have to adapt like people before us did. Yes, we can clean up our act, that is obvious. But in the end, we cannot affect climate change if it is going to happen. And taking up one other point, this debate is also fueled by a lot of people with not lots of knowledge, including David Shopland, who've jumped on the bandwagon, and some people are making money and a name for themselves. So I think it is a subject that we've got to look at carefully. I cannot support this motion because this council and the country cannot afford it on a shrinking economy. We cannot go bankrupt because we will all suffer. So this is a gradual process which will take time. And I think, quite frankly, that 2030 is an unrealistic target date, if there should be a target date. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask a question, and probably no surprise, about engagement with the community with regards to this report. We have actions that the government have taken, we have actions that this local authority have taken in the name of environmental improvements that have actually driven people to the car, driven more people to the car, and have antagonized people against environmental issues, because the harsh reality is life is geared towards things that cause emissions. And it states in your report that transport being a major factor. until we have an adequate public transport system in this authority, people will use the car. And as it's deteriorating at the moment, more people will use the car. And that is beyond our control as an authority. But I have to say, going back to the community issue, we need clear plans to communicate the urgency of the climate emergency and engage with the community. Because what you're asking people to do is to make their life impossible and harder to abide by these net zero targets. And in a world where we have a cost of living crisis, where people are on the breadline, to ask people to do that is a huge ask. So I'd like more clarification on how you would engage the community with this.
Thank you for that. I think Councillor Smith, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I thought I'd bring us into, well, the technical side, where we've got full competence for as a local authority. Page 36 of the Climate Action Plan stated its aim is to focus new mixed-use development on brownfield land in town centres with public transport and proximity to major employment hubs, and that this would be seen in the local plan as well, due to come out shortly. This is the closest I've found to the suggestion that low service density forces travel by private vehicle due to distance needed to travel and limited public transport options. Can it be confirmed that the administration will aim to increase service density through these mixed-use developments to encourage sensible active travel, especially in areas where service density is low? Additionally, is this policy solely for established areas? If it is, we've fallen far too short and this has to be expanded.
Thank you for that. I'm sure is making notes to answer later on. Councillor Pepperell?
Thank you. I'm sure this is right about climate change, but this year we've had the most prolific and abundant growth of hedges, trees, plants I've ever seen, and more complaints in my ward about hedges being overgrown onto pavements than we've ever had before. So I just think, actually, are we doing that much wrong? But I'm sure we are. But going to electric vehicles, the Budgeon's shop, which is on the just next to the airport anyway, they've set up a large number of electric charging points there, high-powered ones, just what's needed. But they've been waiting for months to get the supply. So really, without National Grid doing a better job, they're wasted. And it seems no point in putting up any more in Weston if they can't supply those. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gibbons?
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Waite, for this report. Indeed, we've discussed this. It is a very challenging target, and I take Councillor Charles' point that engaging with the community, which here in Weston we have done to quite a great degree through wonderful initiatives like Curry and Conversation, that we've spoken about the cost of fast fashion, we've spoken about various things, and people have said, you know, yes, we want to do the right thing, but we can't afford to. It's all very well to say I shouldn't shop. I won't mention a name, but there are various cheap clothing stores that manufacture almost throwaway clothes. And it's impossible to say to someone, don't buy that, but buy something that's locally made that costs 3 times as much when you haven't got that money. So certainly we need to do a lot more to help people feel that they are doing something. And I think that we can do that. One of the ways I believe is particularly engaging with our young people. And I know, and I would challenge Councillor Shoprin's assertion that young people and children are frightened. I don't think they're frightened. I think they're passionate. I think they care. And they know a great deal about this issue. And they are challenging us constantly. I think Councillor Petty and I, in the previous administration, attended meetings with young people. And the degree of knowledge and activism that they displayed around this was impressive. I think we would be failing future generations if we don't at least stick to this aspiration and do the best we can to try and ensure that we at least slow the progression of climate change. I accept we can't do everything alone, but that doesn't mean to say that we should do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cartman, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Support many of it. It's very sobering. Recommendation 3 talks about the clear pathway for the Council and bringing about a report to a future meeting of the Council. Given the urgency of what we face, would you commit to it being the next meeting of this Council? Is that possible?
Thank you. We'll... Councillor Bell, I think you're next.
Thank you. I want to try and be a little bit more upbeat, actually. It's hard to be upbeat, isn't it, when you have a sobering report and when you hear from some members, who remind you that dinosaurs are not completely extinct and are still rampaging around the council chamber from time to time. But being more positive about this, actually, what people I think don't recognise is that this is actually in our interests, isn't it? Because so much of the work that we need to do in order to achieve net zero in terms of our own operations is about modernising and making more efficient and fit for purpose our own buildings, our own transport mechanisms, our own support services. So actually, this is good for North Somerset Council, and it is good for the residents of North Somerset to address some of these issues. And I think, Councillor Crockford-Hawley made the point about the investment required in terms of potentially match funding external grants. Well, actually, it's about having a good business case, and it's about the to save opportunities that will deliver carbon benefits, but also improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our operations. And it does both of those things. Some of us went on visits recently to Bristol Airport and to Bristol Port Company. Now, whatever you might think about their operations and whether they're good for the planet or not, what you definitely don't hear from those big, world-leading businesses is what you don't hear from them is, oh, well, the climate emergency isn't a thing and we don't need to do anything about it. What you hear is a commitment to investing and to making a difference and to reducing their own carbon emissions. And why are they doing it? The same reasons we should be doing it, because actually it's good for jobs and it's good for the future of North Somerset and our residents. There are so many exciting opportunities around electrification, around hydrogen in the future, cutting-edge technological jobs that we could be attracting and delivering here in North Somerset. So I would just encourage colleagues not just to think of this as a problem and a challenge, but actually an opportunity that we need to grasp as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. You're next.
Thank you. The aims are laudable. My question, though, is really where is the £5 million matching money going to be sourced from?
Thank you for that. I'm sure a note has been taken of that question. Councillor Petty.
Thank you. I think I'd like to comment on Councillor Bell's comments around the opportunities that it provides for our communities, both in jobs and supporting our businesses be future ready, because as Councillor Waite presented in this report, the threat of flooding on our landscape is real, and our businesses have that as a threat on their doorstep if that's where they're based. So, helping our businesses to evolve and be ready as our landscape changes is a reality. And I think that anybody who talks about this not being man-made and human-caused is not looking at the scientific evidence that has come from multiple studies and multiple reports. Whether it has quoted in here, I think people will have not failed to have seen news reports from the UN, from the IPCC, or from any number of quality sources. I think that our communities and our children are scared when they go on holiday to Greece and a forest fire starts coming for their hotel. I'd love it if everybody can go on a holiday and not have a forest fire coming, but that's the reality. It's happening now. And people are afraid because they live in, or when we had the airport appeal, somebody was dialing in from Canada, and when they finished the call, they had to pack their bags because the fire was coming at their doors. This is not a threat of something that's going to happen someday, one day. That is happening now, and it is not surprising that our children are aware. We're more connected, and our children and our young people are listening to the news, much like we listened to the news when we were 12, 13, 14. I think that for me, and also then, so Councillor Crockford-Hawley raised that he had significant issue with the idea of the council spending money to get to net zero, or to get our buildings to net zero. You know, why should we invest in this? If you tried to get to your house more insulated, you would have to pay for that. You wouldn't expect to do that for free, or somebody to hand you that free insulation. So if we want to improve our assets, our land, our buildings, it is not surprising that we will have to go into our pockets to make our buildings future ready. So I think investment in these things is a requirement, but it's pretty much like expecting your house to be insulated with you not paying in your pockets to do that. My final comment is that I'm really pleased that right now we have a public consultation on our corporate plan, and that we're asking our public today, our residents of North Somerset, do you still agree with open, fair, green? And what are your priorities? So, you know, hey, if your residents don't agree with this, get them to feedback, get them to tell this listening council that we've got it wrong. But all the reports that I've seen over the past number of years from Ipso Mori and other sources say that the UK public is worried. So let's see what they come back with. But I believe that our residents, from people I speak to, are still very concerned about climate change. In a climate when we have a government who is absolutely failing to take leadership, they are looking for somebody to take responsibility and just help them find ways to live a life that is a little bit less carbon intense. So I hope that we can keep doing that, communicating with our public, as Caritas has raised, and helping them find ways to live with less impact. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Burden.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that statement by Councillor Petty sums up a lot of the issues I think we've got. I think it's total scaremongering. I think it is what scares children and what puts people off the very basis that we should be fighting for. Bluntly, there have been forest fires in the Mediterranean district for billions of years. There have been fires in Canada forever. There have been floods forever, otherwise we wouldn't know about dinosaurs. Chairman, many, many years ago I did A-level chemistry. We had a chemistry teacher then who pointed out that in his view, fossil fuels were far too valuable a resource for this country and the planet to burn them. He then assured me there will be a day where people will stop burning these things and find alternatives. He was right. My one thing, Chairman, that man retired and became a vicar. He obviously realised education wasn't the only way of doing it. Now, we're talking about involving people. Call me a dinosaur if you like, I've been around quite a long time. I don't know whether it went out in Councillor Crockford's holy name or mine, but a document similar to the one being talked about now was Towards a Greener North Somerset. We then had The Way with Waste, Towards a Greener North Somerset, stopping waste, encouraging recycling, but before recycling, encouraging reuse. At the same time, we published a handbook, nice and helpful to tell people the best way of disposing of everything. And what are we doing now? We are starting all over again. I happen to be a great supporter of Margaret Thatcher. I think she did an awful lot for this country. And the major thing she did, in my view, was sign up to the Brunt agreements for Agenda 21. The councils worked hard with Agenda 21 process, and that is to act locally, think internationally. That is the policy we have to take. We have to do, in this council and in this country, what we can do. We should not blame others. We have to do it, show ourselves an example, and hope others follow. This total scaremongering, I think, just puts people off totally. We have a problem. Whether it's global warming or not, sea rise is happening. Weather is getting more lumpy. Whether it's me driving a diesel car or not is irrelevant. The fact is, I bought a diesel car 20-odd years ago because the government advice at the time was, buy a diesel car. We have had too much of this short-term scientific ideas becoming mainstream. What we've got to do is just use less, use it better, and set an example. I have every sympathy for the exec member trying to push this one forward. I wish her real luck. But please don't let's go into it on a scaremongering way. And take the advice of my chemistry teacher and pray everybody follows us.
Thank you. Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. And rising as one of the very few people in this room who might be here in 85 years' time. Clearly, this is an issue, and clearly this is one that ought to be top of our agenda. However, in the reading of this report and in the commentary made by councillors, I'm slightly concerned that we are dragging people with us, not walking alongside them. And in this debate, clearly, there are differing views, and I think that, honestly, is down to dragging people, not walking alongside. We have to engage in our communities with this, and I just don't think that a top-down, forced approach is the way to go with this. It needs to be bottom-up, talking with people, talking with businesses about how it is best to work in the lifestyles for them. And that is where I feel that at the moment, the rhetoric that is coming out for this just doesn't quite assimilate. We need to be walking with, not dragging along.
Thank you, Councillor Pryke. Councillor Bridger?
Thank you, Chair. That neatly segues actually into my very brief comment, which is I think we obviously do need to bring residents along with us. I would like the Council to explore a citizens' assembly approach to what we can practically do together, whether that's transport decarbonisation or whatever. There'll be elements, certainly, I think, where that kind of approach would work, and something I think we should at least explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bridger. Councillor Hunt?
I commend the report, and just because I have been out on the streets at the weekend asking the people in my town your three biggest national issues, I can assure you that climate change was number one.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ashton?
Thank you. I can't support this. I think some very good speeches from my colleagues here on why, but I think the problem I had with Councillor Petty's, yet again, argument was that nobody was arguing against it. We all know we have to do something. I just don't think we should be doing it in this council at the expense of our other services. And that's what's happening, especially if you're going to borrow more money, which has to be paid back with interest. And that's coming out of other services which are already short of funding. There's no point going on about it's the government's fault we're short of funding. We are where we are, that's it. We should be doing whatever we have to do with our services as green as possible. We've all signed up to being green and doing our bit. Let's face it, when North Somerset is absolutely at zero, it won't make a damn bit of difference in the country, let alone the world. But it's the right thing to do, because if everybody took that attitude, we'd actually get somewhere. So I understand that. So we should do what we can, but not at the expense of other services. It should be in support of other services, and I think that's what you're lost. You're so blinkered on just doing this one target of being green quicker than anybody else. To hell with the other services. Well, on that basis and on that argument, what you've got to do is close down all the buildings and get rid of all the services, maybe outsource them, and then the council wouldn't be responsible for any carbonisation. And that's clearly daft. It's just pushing the problem elsewhere. But I do think you need to listen to other people's arguments, which aren't quite as adamant as yours and just as valid.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Would you like to sum up now, Councillor Waite?
Could I just give a point of clarification, just on that comment from Councillor Ashton? Just to be clear, the financial proposals that are in this report relate to the ability to secure match funding for the decarbonisation of our own assets, so principally around energy efficiency. So, you know, we're already spending approaching £7 million a year on energy costs. it is absolutely in our interests to make sure that our buildings are fit for purpose and modernised so that we can reduce that demand exactly for the reasons you've stated, so we can spend that money on services and not on lining the pockets of private electricity companies. So the arguments that are being put forward against this recommendation just seem absolute nonsense to me, because they're arguing for things that are not there and are not in the report. And I really would encourage people to read what it says and not what you think it says or what you think it might say.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Now over to you, Councillor Wakefield, summing up.
Thank you so much. I've tried really hard to keep track of all the questions and all the answers that have been coming back in dribs and drabs. So I'm going to avoid going over things that I think have already been addressed, but I'm going to pick up on the things that I think we didn't talk about. Some of the things are, yes, definitely not within our control. The national grid, I'm afraid we don't control it. You know, that is definitely something that is well over our head and well over my pay grade. And yeah, you could argue that it's a nonsense that we have all these wonderful wind farms out of the sea, but that actually the energy they produce can't be transported by the national grid. But again, that is outside our control, and there's nothing we can do about that. Planning. Yes, I absolutely agree that it would be great if we could build houses around existing settlements to avoid unnecessary travel. I think that's a really good point, and I'm sure that that is something that my colleague Jenna Homar is very keen to pick up on when we start talking about housing. That's not my particular area of expertise, but I feel quite certain that she would want to pick that up. There were a lot of comments about community and engaging with communities, and absolutely that is the case, and that is what we would really want to do. And if anybody said, I think somebody mentioned that that we were not bringing people with us because we weren't talking to them. I don't think that's what I said in my speech. I think I distinctly remember talking specifically about how we all need to communicate with our residents, those in our own wards. And there was certainly no mention of us not wanting to bring people with us. I think I actually said quite the opposite, that without all of us bringing people with us, we're not going to get to 2030. I think Councillor Cartman talked about bringing the next briefing forward. I know that we would like very much to make sure that the next report is very robust. And so I would prefer it to be in 6 months, and also because in the meantime it's going to go to scrutiny panel, and I know that Steve Bridger and I have been talking about making sure that we look at things in very close detail, so 6 months would be better. We'd have a more robust report. Citizens' Assembly, yes, that very much picks up on the issue of communicating with people, and that's certainly something that we could talk about. And then finally, I think Councillor Crockley-Hawley said something about, I think the person who's going to take this on should be, yeah, I might not get your name right, I'm so sorry. But you did say something about that it would take somebody with great passion and hard-headed. So when it comes to climate change, I have great passion and I'm definitely hard-headed. So thank you very much. Those are my comments.
Thank you. So I think we go to the vote now. So those in support of the recommendations, please put your hands up. Thank you. Those against? Done the count. Abstentions?
Carried, Chairperson.
Thank you, that's carried. Right. Moving on. Portishead Neighbourhood Plan, and I think Councillor Caniford's just going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will be fairly quick on this. I'm asking this council to make the Portishead Neighbourhood Plan. This has been a process going on over 12 months. First of all, I would like to commend Portishead Town Council because they have done a huge amount of work. They have been pursuing this neighbourhood plan now for some time, but the detail they got into and the work they have done deserves recognition. the neighbourhood plan will introduce policies, or their policies within it, which we will now vote on. Will sit next to our Somerset core strategies, North Somerset core strategies, our development management plan and site allocation plans. So those would be considered, and it will sit within the same time frame, so there may be alterations to be made after the new local plan is adopted. Once this plan has been made, for members who aren't aware, once a council has a neighbourhood plan, they will then receive 25% of any SIL payments, which is a good way of funding projects that they want in their own town, instead of the usual 15% that parishes and councils don't get. They do get if they don't have a neighbourhood plan. So it's a really good thing to do, and it is our 7th neighbourhood plan in North Somerset. So I'm looking for support on this. It has passed its referendum with the public, and we now have a process to agree that the process has been followed properly, and we support the neighbourhood plan being made, as they call it in the planning terms.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Okay. Yeah, Councillor Charles, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Portishead will be pleased. Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Shop. Moving on to the corporate parenting report, a lengthy report, and I think Councillor Gibbons is just going to sum up briefly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will be brief. I was charged to be brief, and I will be, because you've all had the papers. And as you can see, this is a recommendation that all of you recognise your corporate parenting responsibilities and commit to getting a better understanding of your role as corporate parents, and think about the ways you can support our young people. I know that quite a few of you are new councillors, and I'm aware that many of you, not all, have done the corporate parenting training, and I would urge you, if you haven't done it, to go into the councillor resource area and look at the training as a webinar, so that you've got a better understanding of what we are doing and what you can do. Basically, for whatever reason, there are always children and young people that aren't able to stay at home. And in that instance, we as a local authority have to step in and look after them. And at that point, they become our children. You may not have children of your own, or you may have them, but at this point, you have a cohort of young people that are your children, and you have to think about what you would want for a young person in your care, and think, is it good enough for my child? Then it's good enough for our children as corporate parents. What I was going to draw your attention to, I hope that you've looked at our promise in the documentation that you received. Okay. And that is something that we are going to be looking at and revisiting in the coming months. So I'd love to invite you all to think about that promise, see if there's anything there that you think we should be committing to promise our young people that we aren't. We'll be talking to young people, and through the efforts of our very able young director, Beth Swan, who can't be here this evening, we'll be engaging with them to refine that promise and make sure that it really does address the needs and feelings of the young people that we look after. You'll see also in that report that when we did that in the previous administration, we went to the trouble of having a large physical card in the chamber which people signed up to, and that will be happening in the near future once we have refreshed the promise and engaged with young people. We have 6 meetings of the corporate parenting panel per year, and of those, 3 of them are thematic. The themes are chosen by the young people, and the young people are present. And I'm very grateful that in the last 2, since the May election, we've had a good representation from councillors. And I think that those who've attended, I know Councillor Clayton's attended and Councillor Hunt had attended for the first time, found it a very rewarding experience, challenging, but rewarding. And I think the key thing we take away from that, when we listen to young people and we hear their concerns and we hear what they want done, is that we actually act upon it. We don't just sit there and listen to them. I think Councillor Tristram made that point to me very much so, that we would not ever want to engage in a cynical exercise of listening and doing nothing. So when you do come along, just be prepared that we are going to be doing something meaningful when we engage with the young people at the meeting. So as corporate parents over the past 4 years when I held this role, I have to say I'm very, very grateful and proud of the efforts that councillors have made to support our young people. We had a difficult time over the past 4 years with 2 years of COVID, which kind of impacted our ability to engage with young people face to face. But people did what they could. They gave donations, they arranged courses. Some of the councillors who did this aren't in the chamber today because either they didn't choose to be re-elected or unfortunately they didn't get re-elected. But I have to mention Jeff Richardson, who arranged a fantastic event for our young people, which was a pottery class. We had other donations of toys and clothes, which were given to the young people, and they could pick them up at the drop-in room we have here. And mentoring was offered, a host of other things. People were so very willing to step up and do something for our young people. So anyone who wants to talk to me or any member of the team about something that they feel they can do, we're very happy to hear from you. And of course, very shortly, I shall be sending out the email asking you to donate to our Christmas fund, which is to ensure that we can give to our older care leavers, those over 21, a small Christmas gift. We also set up something in the last administration called the Next Steps Fund, which was using a small pot of money. And basically what it is that it's a fund we have where our young people can come to us as corporate parents and ask, just as any young person would of their parents, I need a little bit extra. You know, I need £250 to buy, I'm citing some examples, a set of knives so I can complete my chef's training. I need a bit of money towards some equipment so I can complete my training as a tree surgeon. Little things like that that can make all the difference in a young person's aspirations to fulfill their career. So we are hoping to go on with that, and in future council meetings our young director will bring a presentation. She brought one last time, you'll remember, which was very engaging and explained in great detail what these small actions have meant to young people. So on that basis, I won't take your time up any longer, but I would like, in a sense, to feel that you are fully engaged as corporate parents and that you will think about what you can individually do. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but I believe that this is one of the most important responsibilities we have as councillors, and one where, in a small way, or in a big way, we can make an enormous difference to someone's life. So I thank you, and I hope that you've read all the documents there, and I look forward to hearing from you by email or in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. The report is for noting, but please take up Councillor Gibbons' Catherine's offer. If you think you can in any way support our young people, please email her or talk to her. Thank you. Item 9, proposed changes to the quorum for policy and scrutiny panels. Over to our solicitor.
Chairperson, at the moment we have a mismatch between council and its committees where quorum is a quarter and the scrutiny panels where the quorum is a third. The report is quite simple. It's recommending we bring them into parity and set quorum for everything at a quarter.
Thank you. I think Councillor Tristram, you were going to move this? I can't see you. Where are you? Ah, there you are.
Yes,
You're going to move this recommendation?
I definitely move this recommendation, and it arose originally, in my mind, because of a problem with the SIPS panel not being quorate on a couple of occasions, and in talking with Nick, it turned out that the simplest way to sort this would be to reduce the quorum number.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Bridger? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? I can't see characters. Thank you. The trouble is I'm a bit little, so I can't see over people's heads. I'm sorry. We have no petitions. So over to item 11, and I think Councillor Tristram, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, please. And again, I'll be brief. Just in case anyone hasn't read what I had put forward to be written in the documents we've all been presented with, there's a very short piece. The title is Motion for the Ocean and Rivers, and what it says is North Somerset is a coastal district that is also one of the most low-lying and flood-prone areas in England. We depend on the sea for our livelihood through tourism, and on the land threatened by sea level rise and river flooding for our farming and places to live and work. We recognise the importance of the marine and river ecosystems and our role as a stakeholder in them. We undertake to bring a report forward to Council within 12 months of this motion, containing recommendations to ensure we play our part in realising clean, healthy and productive rivers and ocean, alongside our existing commitment to tackle the climate emergency. So that's the basic statement, and it's deliberately very short and much shorter than the motion for the ocean, which you can find online. It's based on that model motion published by Dr. Buchan and colleagues at the Universities of Exeter and Plymouth, and I would use that model for the detailed planning, which, if you accept this motion, we will then go in for. 14 other local authorities, most of them coastal but not all, have already adopted this idea, using a variety of wordings but all with the same underlying aim. We depend on the ocean, in our case the Bristol Channel, and it depends on us not to continue messing it about. In our case in North Somerset, our main immediate dependence is for tourism. For that, we need the sea and beaches to be clean enough for people to want to visit. That depends on litter, which is obviously visible, and also what we pour into the sea through our rivers and our wastewater discharges. Not so visible, but very significant when people look at the websites that tell them whether Western Beach, for instance, has a nice clean sea to want to go and swim in. Monmouth County Council, who made this declaration in March last year, added "and rivers" to the motion, and I've done that for North Somerset too, so it's actually the motion for the ocean and rivers. We have many small rivers flowing through our district, as well as the Avon, which forms our northern boundary. These rivers are crucial to the landscapes they flow through, for drainage and flood prevention, for fishing, and for biodiversity. And then as they flow into the Bristol Channel, they have the potential to help it to be a healthy environment or a polluted one. That's the local perspective, very important to all of us, but there is also the larger one, which is going to refer back to what Councillor Waite was talking about earlier on. The oceans are thought to absorb 25 to 30% of carbon dioxide emissions. This is from the World Economic Forum in 2020. So they're crucial in any hope to reduce the carbon content of the atmosphere. Oceans also release and absorb vast amounts of methane. The balance of methane going into or coming out of the oceans depends on the health of the oceans and the health of the sea floor, and that's from a paper in Nature 2019. Methane is up to 35 times as powerful an atmosphere warming gas as CO2, and we have a lot of very shallow seafloor out there which go out and look up towards Steepholm most of the time, and you'll see what is basically seafloor. It can be healthy or it might not be, and that we've got some effect on that. This council declared a climate emergency in February 2019. We've just been hearing about what I think is an excellent climate emergency action plan. That action plan mentions the sea so far only in the context of building flood defences. It also noted that we're 85 years away from being a carbon neutral local authority area. Not a carbon neutral local authority, but the area that we represent. A lot of this is from factors beyond our immediate control, but it does matter what we say. We're in positions of influence. I believe that our voice, added to the other councils who have already declared this motion, can be an important factor in getting recognition for the fact that we can't win the war to contain and then reverse climate change without stopping our damage to the ocean. I would be very grateful for your support.
Do you have a seconder? Now, we have a choice. We can either go straight to a vote, or if you want to prolong the debate, I can offer the opportunity to prolong the debate. I need 7 people to support a debate, or we can go straight to vote. Do I have 7 people to support a debate? No. So we'll take the vote anyway. All those in favour of supporting Councillor Tristram's motion, please put your hand up. Wow. I think that's carried. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? Councillor Shopland abstaining. Thank you, Councillor Tristram. We now move to question time. We've been extremely efficient over the last 2 meetings, so if I could remind you, please first of all direct your question to a particular executive member, a short introduction on the background to your question, and then please pose your question. We won't have any follow-ups to start with. If you want a follow-up question, please add your name to the bottom of the list and we'll come back to you, depending on how long the list is, of course. So if we start with Councillor Burden, I think you were first.
Thank you, Chairman. Question to Councillor Clayton regarding the report he took to the Executive on public protection orders. I've done a fair bit of research on this one since the meeting, and I'd like him, if he could, ask the officers, please, number 1, to forward me a list of all those people who were consulted on this matter, because I've discussed it with the NFU, various other dog owners and various dog clubs, and the number 6, none of them can actually remember being consulted. And secondly, Chairman, can I ask him whether he agrees, and will ask his officers to agree, with the statement in the government handbook on controlling irresponsible dog ownership, page 42, that anything this council brings in relation to public protection orders on dogs will not apply to working animals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burden, for your question. The answer to the first answer to your question is yes. I will make contact with the officers, but as far as I'm aware, this went out to consultation. So your dog clubs and dog owners did have a chance to use their initiative to be able to respond to the consultation.
Yeah, that's the very point. I'd like to know how it went out to consultation, because when the NFU don't know about it, and it's talking about working dogs, and when the owner in Yatton of over 50 dogs doesn't know about it, it really makes me wonder how efficient the council's consultation was.
Yeah, that's fine. The one thing I will ask is if you could email me this, and then I can pass it on to officers so I can get it precise for you. The second part of your question is in relation to working dogs. If you're referring to working dogs on private land, then it will not. It doesn't take into account private land. This is North Somerset Council owned land that this will be enforced.
Yes, certainly, please. This is just a point made.
Councillor Crawford-Hawley.
Question for my colleague, Councillor Caniford. Having been involved in several past administrations' attempts to develop the vacant plots of council-owned land in central Western-super-Mare, I look around and ask myself, what advances have been made? Answer, none, despite numerous computer-inspired pictures, consultants' reports, and London-based misunderstandings about how smaller settlements tick. Are we convinced that our model for development, which encompasses all sites in one single large developer package, is necessarily the right way to handle these former Homes England sites? I will have no supplementary.
Thank you. I would have to agree it has taken too long to bring these sites forward, but that is for numerous reasons. And currently I would say that the land values and the building environment is very unfavourable to us as a council currently. However, I do agree with you that we should be looking at all opportunities around either market sale, development agreements, corporate joint ventures. I don't think there is any we should exclude, including the opportunity to sell all sites to one developer as long as we get what we want in the town centres. So, yes, I think we should look at all opportunities, and yes, I agree with it's taken too long. And I do believe that we should be pushing harder to see this resolved. And I do agree with you that it does feel as nothing is going on. But I think in fairness to officers, there has been a great deal of work going on beneath the surface in terms of talking to developers, trying to find solutions, talking to designers. But we do have to push this harder, and I will take that challenge up to do so.
So there will be a supplementary question, if I may.
I'll add you to the bottom.
And will you tell us what conversations you've been having with officers about this?
I'll add you to the bottom. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on, but you still heard me, didn't you?
This is to Councillor Bell, and it concerns a very contentious subject in Clevedon. It's in two parts, concerning the Clevedon bid. Who authorised the vote made by this council in the Clevedon bid election, and why weren't the ward members, the town council or the traders' views sought prior to the vote being cast?
Yes, thank you for your question. So obviously, Councillor Shopland will know that the matter of the Clevedon bid has been referred to the Secretary of State for review. So I think it's important for colleagues to note that that is happening, and that referral occurred both because we as a council referred it, but also because of other interested parties making a referral, and that was due to some questions about anomalies in the validity of the ballot. In terms of his specific questions, officers made a recommendation to the relevant executive members for in respect of casting this council's votes on the bid, as had happened with previous bid applications in Clevedon and in Weston-super-Mare in previous years and under previous administrations, and we followed that pattern on this occasion. We cast our votes as ratepayers, in our capacity as ratepayers under the bid and the bid levy payers, and that's why there wasn't a consultation, because we weren't casting our vote on behalf of other people, we were casting our vote on behalf of ourselves as levy payers.
Thank you. Do I add you at the bottom for another question, Councillor Shopland, or was that it? You're shattered. Okay. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Councillor Cunniford. 24th of July this year, Councillor Cunniford asked for all the Nailsea councillors to have a meeting with himself and the officers to discuss infrastructure in Nailsea ready for the local plan to be signed off at the exec in October. It was a good start, but we agreed to have a follow-up meeting, and for the record, I did not agree to anything in this meeting. 1st of August, I emailed Councillor Cunniford and various other officers asking, when is this follow-up meeting going to be? Response, person leading it's back in a week's time. Jump forward 3 weeks, another email. When's this meeting going to be? No reply from this email. Jump forward another 2 weeks. When's the meeting going to be? I'm getting concerned running out of time to arrange a meeting and to have any follow-up points. No reply. Can you confirm that there will be a follow-up meeting as agreed, that there will be enough time to arrange it for everyone to attend, and that there will be enough time to iron out any issues after that meeting occurs? And for the record, nothing was agreed in that meeting, so if it goes to the local plan, you cannot say we've been consulted, because we have not.
Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, I think there's been some confusion here, and I'm happy to pick that up tomorrow, as we do have a meeting in the diary about Nelsey. And I think what we've confused is, I think at that meeting, a great deal of comment was about speed limits to the south of the village, town, and I think that's where this has gone. So I will pick that up first thing in the morning, and we'll get something in the diary ASAP.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't put a mic on.
That's okay. I submitted 2 questions prior, so do you want me to do both or just one?
I'll take one now and put you on the bottom for the second one.
Awesome, thank you. My first question is to Councillor Young with regards to public transport. Oh, she's not here? All right, that makes it easier. I'll just do my other one.
Go ahead, do your other one.
My next one's for Councillor Caniford. One of my colleagues said this sounds like a usual moan that towns in the north get ignored by Western, but this isn't a usual moan. But what I want to say is that I'm quite pleased by some of the work the executive has done so far with regards to towns in the north, such as Portishead, the support that Councillor Caniford and Councillor Bell have offered with regards to our loss of a post office, the concerns over the X5 bus route, and various other matters have been welcome. But what we still lack, and I've asked this when we were in the last administration, and I'll ask this again of you, Mark, is a very clear vision and placemaking plan for northern towns. We have an exemplary vision for Western, of what Western needs, what Western will be hopefully getting, but I cannot verbalise a plan of what North Somerset Council's vision is for northern towns and Portishead in particular. And that, sadly, to me, only exacerbates that not particularly true myth that North Somerset ignores northern towns. Can we have a commitment to have as equal a vision and as equal a passion that actually highlights some of the good work North Somerset does for northern towns in a clear placemaking strategy, please?
Thank you, Caritas. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Caritas, for that, and thanks for the warning of the question. I can absolutely assure you that we'll engage with Portishead councillors, all councillors, not just exec councillors. I think it's very important to remember that, you know, just in the name placemaking, we must be careful. We had the Portishead Master Plan, which we've had pushback from, as you're well aware. A great deal of investment, not just time, went into that, but unfortunately it stalled in terms of the Portishead Town Council at the very last hurdle. But yes, we will restart discussing with that, and of course we can then expand that to other parts and the whole of the town in terms of a Portishead placemaking strategy, or the Portishead Master Plan for the overall growth of the town. I think we've got to be really careful when we talk about which towns get more investment. In particularly, it's you've got to be careful when you discuss those things, because Portishead has had more money in terms of its infrastructure pushed out currently with the Metro West Rail Link, and if that comes through, and when it comes through, it'll be a huge amount of money, and to suggest that everyone seems to get more money other than Portishead. However, I do know, and I do appreciate you are very supportive of that scheme, and we just need to make sure that that is got over the line for you and the people in Portishead, so they can also use the facilities through Bristol. However, I will confirm that we will sit down and go through placemaking. I will come up again. We came up on a couple of occasions to go through the Portishead framework, just to make sure councillors were satisfied and happy, and elected members were happy with that, but unfortunately the town council found some problems with it.
I'll put you at the bottom, Caritas. Thank you, Mark. Councillor Smith, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was one again pre-submitted, and it's as follows. According to the ONS, in 2018, and that was the last...
Can I just ask who this is for?
Oh, apologies. I'll say for Mike Bell as leader, but it's a more general point, but if another exec member feels able, they're welcome to.
Thank you.
According to the ONS, in 2018, 10% of the UK adult population, mirrored in the southwest as well, were digitally excluded or non-users, with 91% of those being aged 55 plus. In Ash, we have 14,672 carers, which is 94%, over 50 years old. And it is noted that the older the carer, the more hours of care per week are performed, some in excess of 50. A main concern from the TCC is that Westlink may exclude the elderly, which is marked as a priority group due to being app only, and then usually being less digitally minded or excluded. And again, there is countless criticism, particularly on the seafront, and again, countless tonight, on online-only consultations for planning and policy directions. Will the administration note that the digital-only approach to delivering council services will exclude a large proportion of our residents who are the most in need, and then act to ensure that traditional methods are still simple, effective and viable?
Thank you. Is that you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it, but I'm also happy to assure Councillor Smith that all of the exec members are able, so they could have answered the question as well, I'm sure. I thank you for your question. I mean, there's a few factual errors in what you were saying. So, I mean, firstly, I should say our policy is digital first, not digital only, and that's an important distinction because it is about encouraging people to use digital methods as much as possible, because that is more effective, it's more efficient, it definitely saves us money, but it mustn't be the only channel, and indeed isn't the only channel that residents have to connect with our services. Now, that's not to say that everything is always perfect, because it absolutely isn't, but we definitely do have a digital first, not a digital only approach. For example, you mentioned Westlink. It is absolutely not app only. There is a telephone line that people can contact to make bookings, so you can access the service in that way. We're really keen to do more around improving customer experience and customer engagement, and also understanding residents' digital skills. So we've done a lot of work helping communities to get access to online services and to improve their skills. We're going to be doing a piece of work in the next few months that was going to specifically look at digital uptake in North Somerset, understanding some of the barriers so that we can support communities to do more of that. And I would really encourage you to look at our customer services and digital strategy, which has got some of the things that we're going to be doing further. If any member has got examples of where they feel we haven't delivered alternative methods, then please do let me know, because we're really keen to address that. And one great way to do that immediately is the engagement that we're doing on the corporate plan and MTFP over the next few weeks, where there are lots of face-to-face drop-in sessions. There are paper surveys as well as the online survey. We're doing online sessions, so there's a real blend of opportunities for people to engage. And I think that speaks volumes about the commitment that we've got to reach people right across North Somerset in lots of different ways.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Thornton.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is a question for Councillor Mike Solomon, and it's regarding the options for cleaning up Uphill Wharf, which is being demanded by quite a lot of local Uphill residents and business owners. And I'm just wondering if Councillor Solomon can provide me with a date for when the report on those options will be available.
Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor. At this moment in time, I can't provide you with a date, but tomorrow I'll get in touch with the team and ask. There was some work being done, as you know. It's very, very complicated in terms of ownership and various other things, but we are looking to put something together, and I will ask tomorrow if there is a date that we've fixed on for the future and let you know. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Burden.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Secondary question to Councillor Clayton, who I believe fell into the trap that I thought most people had, and I was one of them, when he said the orders only apply to council land. The way I understand it, the definition I've been told is land in North Somerset that the public have free access to, which leaves a particular farmer with a particular issue that he can have his 7 sheepdogs on one side of the road, but it's illegal for him to cross the road with them. So can he please look into this? Because if it is a case that it is only council-owned open space, I don't believe there is an issue. But I believe there is an issue that has been compounded by sticking this off the top of the head number 6 in, to seriously affect very few people, but certain people with legitimate uses. So could he please confirm where the orders apply to?
Thank you. You did say you were going to get some information back. Do you want to reply?
Yeah, I am aware that it is only North Somerset Council open spaces, but I will double check that for you, Councillor Burden.
Thank you. Back to John Cropford-Hawley for your second question.
No, thank you.
What did you say?
I said no, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of question time. Thank you very much. Oh, Caritas, I'd crossed you off. Did you want one more? Go on then, Caritas.
It was only a quick thing to respond to Mark. I was a little bit disappointed when I was being quite praising of your efforts to receive a standard politician's divisive answer. When I talk about place and when I talk about a clear vision for Northern Towns and Portishead, which I represent in particular, I mean with respect to the geographical and demographics of that region. North Somerset, in some respects, is an artificial construct when it comes to how things are designed. Residents in Portishead, for example, economically, socially, and educationally, but not exclusively educationally, feel an affinity to Bristol rather than Weston, and that we should perhaps look in our approaches to things like transport, education, employment, and the delivery of such, to look at the different demographic aspects and where different parts of the region feel an affinity, and that not everything can centre around Weston. And also, please don't use the railway. Come on, that's an old chestnut. Thank you.
Over to you, Mark.
No, there's no answer to that. Again, I will reiterate that this council has agreed to spend a huge amount of money on the railway if it wants to link into the centre of Bristol. And I wish we could have the same down here, but there we are.
Okay, end of question time. Thank you very much. Moving on. Thank you, everybody. Could I just remind you that, could we have a note of your question, please, sent in either by email or write it out now, please, for the minutes? Thank you very much. I forgot to say that at the beginning. Thank you. So moving on. No matters referred from previous meeting. Then it's my announcements. I've got 3. One is to reiterate what Bridget and Catherine said about going to visit the Council Connect team. It's really enlightening. So do just ring up Council Connect and ask for a visit, and you can hear exactly what the team is doing and how successful they are in answering the queries. The second one is one that you may or may not know. We have a new members room. It's just down the corridor on the left. Do go and have a look at the new members room. It is there up and running. There has been some discussions about adding plants, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. So do have a look at the new members room. And finally, I'm carrying on the tradition started by Karen Haverson last year. The Winter Gardens have been booked for Western Carnival night on Friday the 10th of November. It's for councillors and their families, if you would like to come along to be in the Winter Gardens for the carnival with a very light snack, the ability to buy yourself a drink. You're very welcome. I need to know numbers from you by the end of September, because then the rest of the places are going to be offered to our foster carers and our care leavers. So you have an opportunity to let me know if any of you with your families wish to come. September the 30th is the deadline. Hello.
I can let you know now that I'd like my place to be given to the foster carers, please.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, there will be about 50 places for foster carers anyway, but thank you for that. Right, that's me finished. Over to the leader.
Thank you. I've just got one thing to mention, and that was just to remind colleagues that we're very pleased to be hosting National Pride in Weston-super-Mare and North Somerset this year. It's taking place in Grove Park on the 30th of September. Great credit to the group of volunteers who've been working very hard to organise this, with support from teams from North Somerset, Western Town Council, Western Bid and others. Tickets are on sale now, so please do buy a ticket and go along and support the event. It's a really important opportunity for us to underline the warm welcome that we will always give to all people and all visitors to North Somerset, and hopefully it will be a very successful event.
Thank you. 30th of September, you say? Thank you. Now we have our Chief Executive's announcements.
Thank you. I wanted to add my condolences to Mark Crosby's family and assure members that I have written on behalf of the Council to extend our thoughts to his family. And I was also made aware this morning of another sad death of a former councillor and council chair, Howard Roberts, and our thoughts are with his family also, and I shall be writing to extend our condolences to them.
Thank you. Forward plan, I think, Leader, you're going to present the forward plan? Just for noting, any... That's no comments. Policy and scrutinal panel reports, there are none. Reports referred from executive, there are none. Reports and matters from policy overview and scrutiny panels. This time round there are none. I'm sure some will be coming to future council meetings. Reports and matters from other committees. We have no reports from the other committees. Avon Fire Authority, there's been no meeting. Avon and Somerset Police, there's been no meeting. West of England Combined Authority, there was nobody from the council at their recent meeting, so no reports there. Finally, urgent business. There's no urgent business. So thank you very much for a very good, informative, efficient and successful council meeting. And remember to let me know your numbers for the carnival. Thank you and good night.